Hey folks, welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Policy Genius. Look, summer's coming to an end and the leaves are about to fall. When Mother Nature does her thing to prepare for the new season, you can do yours by getting free life insurance quotes with Policy Genius. If someone relies on your financial support, whether it's a child, an aging parent, or even a business partner, you need life insurance to properly provide for their families. Most people need 10 times the life insurance coverage that they get through their employer. This is really important because you want these folks, if something really bad happened to you and you were to be killed or die, you want your loved ones to be cared for in the lifestyle that they have grown accustomed to. And I love Policy Genius because it makes shopping for life insurance so simple and so easy. They make it easy to compare quotes from over a dozen top insurers all in one place. And why do you want to compare? Because you could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius, which could be $1,300 or more per year on life insurance by using Policy Genius to compare policies. The licensed experts at Policy Genius work for you, not the insurance companies, so you can trust them to help you navigate every step of the shopping and buying process. That kind of service has earned Policy Genius thousands of 5-star reviews across Trustpilot and Google. Eligible applicants can get covered in as little as a week thanks to an award-winning policy option that swaps the standard medical exam requirement for a simple phone call. This exclusive policy was recently rated #1 by Forbes Advisor, higher than options from Ladder, Ethos, and Bestow. All you have to do is head to policygenius.com/smokingtire. That's policygenius.com/smokingtire. In minutes, you can work out how much life insurance coverage you need and compare personalized quotes to find your best price. When you're ready to apply, the Policy Genius team will handle the paperwork and the scheduling for free. Policy Genius doesn't add on any extra fees. So head over to policygenius.com/smokingtire to get started right now. That's policygenius.com/smokingtire to get started right now. Because when it comes to insurance, it's nice to get it right. We're also brought to you by Auto Tempest. You've been hearing about them forever. You know how it works. Auto Tempest is the place to go. Why? Because Auto Tempest is all the places. They make searching for your next car nice and easy. You no longer need to spend time going to individual car sites like Cars.com, TrueCar, or Carvana. They bring all those listings to one place. Plus, they even link you to Facebook Marketplace and nationwide Craigslist results. They also now offer search alerts, so you can sign up to receive emails when new listings that match your search show up. We have a project that we are working on, and I can't talk about it quite yet, but it requires finding some cars. And all I know is that I've never had a more convenient and easier way to find these cars than at Auto Tempest, because it brings everything into one place. I am busy. I don't have the time to look everywhere, individual sites for individual cars. You get all the cars in one search at autotempest.com/TST. Use the /TST so they know we sent you. That's autotempest.com/TST. And look, when you're out driving that car, you know what you need the protection of? Off the Record. OTR, baby. Off the Record is a service that helps you get matched with a qualified attorney anywhere in the country to fight that ticket. You should not plead guilty to a moving violation ever. Why? Because it's so easy to not do that with Off the Record. All you have to do is type in the state you got your ticket, answer a couple basic questions, or upload a photo of the ticket, and Off the Record will match you with a qualified attorney who will fight that ticket on your behalf. You don't have to go to court. They will go to court for you. They have a 93% success rate, and they got a money-back guarantee if they're unable to keep the ticket off of your record. See, that's the thing. Paying the fine is just the beginning. Once the ticket's on your record, you're in the system, your insurance premiums are going to go up, and it's not just that fine. It could be thousands of dollars over many years that is added to your insurance because of that one ticket. Off the Record gets that ticket off of your record and keeps it off so you can keep driving worry-free and be out of that ecosystem. We have sent hundreds of people to Off the Records in almost every state in the country. I get letters from people all the time. They say they used Off the Record, they beat that ticket, and thank you so much for introducing it. So go to offtherecord.com/TST or use code TST10 on the Off the Record app. This is a code that will get you 10% off all services from Off the Record through May of 2023. So you could download it, write down that code now, and keep that handy, because you don't want to be sitting on the side of the road panicked about that ticket. You want to know you got Off the Record in the bag. And we're also brought to you by Dylan Optics, the official eyewear of the Smoking Tire podcast. I've been wearing these Dylans for 10 years now. They're fabulous glasses. They got that signature matte finish look that comes in a bunch of different colors, the blue, green, gold, red, black, silver, bunch of different frame styles, aviator style, wraparound style, wayfarer style. They're adding new styles seemingly every year, and you can mix and match the different colors to know that you have a pair of glasses that you're not going to be seeing on someone else when you go down to the beach, when you go to the mall. It's going to be your glasses and only your glasses. They have a little like configurator like cars do. They're made using Italian and Japanese parts in Scottsdale, Arizona. We like them very much, and I've been wearing them for so long. Like I never want to wear anything else. Like they really help me keep my eyes feeling good after long days of driving, long days in the desert. I'm just so about Dylan Optics. So if you go to thesmokingtire.com and click on the partners tab, right? That's where you find our partners, our retail partners. And you go on that Dylan Optics link right there. You can click on my face. You can click on the title. It will bring you to Dylan Optics website. They'll know you came from us, and we will send you a free Smoking Tire t-shirt with every pair of Dylans you buy. You buy 3 pairs, we send you 3 shirts. It's like that. It's that easy. And man, I'm going to be rocking these things for the rest of my life. Dylan Optics is the official eyewear of the Smoking Tire podcast. All right, on this episode of the show, very excited to do this one. My friend John Temerian is calling in from his shop, Curated, down in Miami. Curated is a restoration, sales, and service center for vintage supercars from the 60s through the 90s, the really rare stuff, stick shift stuff, weird stuff like the Jaguar XJ220 and the Bugatti EB110, and then, of course, the Countach, the Diablo, Ferrari F40, all the stuff that was on the posters of my bedroom walls. Temerian's got it, or has had it in his shop. He's got some really interesting stories about how he got into this business, what they do down there, and how they do it. And I really enjoyed my conversation with John Temerian of Curated in Miami. Check out wearecurated.com for everything they do, and let's have a show. Oh, there we go. All right. Live and direct from downtown Miami. John Temerian. What's up, brother?
What's up, brother? How are you?
I really am enjoying your set dressing there. I was at a Diablo SE30 behind you.
That is a Diablo SE30, a Diablo GT, and you can see a little bit of a F40.
Oh yeah, we've got just a couple little inches of F40 there. Yeah, nice little background you've got going. You're working with. I visited your shop last year, and man, can I just fucking wander around that place for a few hours and just drool. It is like. It is a museum, a workshop, a dealership, exclusively for poster cars for people that are exactly our age. It's like amazing.
Well, thank you. That's a huge compliment coming from you. That means a lot. It's definitely surreal, to be working around the cars, and I think the entire motto and the DNA and sort of the energy and environment is passion with everybody. I mean, don't attract team members that aren't passionate about the cars that are here. So I think it's like overflowing always with, 80s and 90s, just craziness. And it just gets everyone excited.
Yeah.
So it's I think if you actually click on our sold inventory, you'll see like it's just
It's wild. No, the cars that have run through your place, you know,
wow, yeah,
the really good stuff tends to not stick around for very long. You know, it's an Instagram post or two, and people are scooping that shit up, and you know, it's at the right time because you know, the real super primo, highest performing, best built manual transmission analog cars are now approaching an age where they are being, you know, they're coming out of that minimum appreciation and on their way towards maximum appreciation. I mean, people, you know, as I grew up in the business, people were referring to like Countach's and Diablos as like shit boxes, you know what I mean, and unappreciated. And now it's like, oh shit, you've got a Diablo. Like now it's like a real, you know, it's a real appreciation among people in their late 30s up until their, you know, early 50s, and isn't that what you're seeing?
Well, I think, you know, when we first started about 8 years ago, and I've been around this since I was a little kid. But when we first started formally as the dealership, people were making fun of me. I mean, people were like, wait, you're going to build a dealership around 80 supercars and Countach's and Diablos.
Yeah.
And, you know, they were looked at as ostentatious, Playboys cars, drug dealers cars from the 80s and 90s. And I think, you know, I did whatever I could at that time, and our team did whatever to really elevate them as much as we could. These are not, you know, these are not just these, you know, excessive cars from the 1980s. No, these are art, and these were bold cars. You know, they made statements of design and technology. And it's funny because now looking back, everyone that was making fun of me now is like, okay, I see it, I get it. And
yeah.
It's
and
so
by the way,
cool.
can you get me a Diablo SE30 with low mile?
Well,
hey man, I was just kidding around.
And you know what? That's what's happened. I mean, listen, people I don't think realize just how rare those cars are. Countach and Diablo production is nothing.
Yeah.
When you compare it to Porsche and Ferrari and all these cars, it's almost silly to think that at one point, so to give you a quick fact, in the business plan in 1998, Ford Lamborghini worldwide was like 182 cars. So imagine that's
yeah. No, I mean Lamborghini sells
Diablo SV.
Yeah, I think Lambo sells more Uruses in a quarter than all the entire Countach production run over almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Right? Isn't that accurate? I think they sell 8,000 Uruses a year. You know, it's like crazy.
So I think you're dead on.
Yeah.
And I think here's, you know, what we see is there's a younger guys like yourself. They had a poster on their wall, and I think it's become culturally so cool, so, and I hate to sound like a cliche, but almost like this is a next generation's version of modern art. And
sure,
it's usable modern art. It's relatable. I mean, what a conversation piece. I'm sure you know.
Yeah, I know.
You take a Countach.
You win. Wherever you go with a Countach, you are the winner of that particular day. You just, there's no, you know, and in LA, and I'm sure, you know, you experience this in Miami as well. Even the 7-figure cars are seriously mass produced by comparison. And if you go to an area that has a high concentration of wealth, like LA or like Orange County or like Miami, I've been to car shows in my Countach where there are multiple Sennas, multiple Koenigsegg's,
Yes.
multiple Paganis. And the only difference between any of them is the color.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
True.
And only one Countach. And so if you've got these analog supercars, you know, and Nicolas Cage in fucking Gone in 60 Seconds was 20 years ahead of his time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With his
Way
now if I had a
Totally.
275 GTB 4 cam, you could flip-flop that 355 Ferrari for a Huracan, you know, and a Countach. You know, now if I had an LP 400 Periscopo,
You would be a
I
connoisseur.
wouldn't be a self-indulgent wiener. You know? Exactly. But you said, and
so true, and
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, and I think what's most exciting to me is there is a young generation of guys that are, 38. I mean, that's insanely young. 45. That's young to be collecting, that are now saying, you know what? I'm not going to buy new stuff. Everywhere I go to Cars and Coffee and there's 20 pistas sitting there. I want to be, I want something that's still usable. So let's call it,
that's important.
Starting in the 1980s.
Yeah, that's important. It's got to run and drive. AC. Yeah. Air conditioning. Yes.
Yes, some AC, some creature comforts, and I want to be different. And I look at really, I mean, yes, the 80s, you have some of these creature comfort, but really the 90s cars, as that's when you have things like power steering, better AC, et cetera. And that's, I think that's also why we sell so many Diablos, is because they just do everything so well. And then what I find is when I introduce someone into a Murcielago manual or a Diablo, they end up saying, okay, I want to even now. Okay, now I'll go more raw and I'll get Countach.
Yeah, right. The Merc manual, I appreciated the Mercy manual when it was new. It was good. Back in the day when I worked at
You're like the only guy.
No, I did, because you know why? Because I worked at Gotham Dream Cars, right? And we had the E-Gear cars for rent.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I saw the promise. They were fast. They were good to look at, but that E-Gear was such a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. And we had an in-house mechanic who would work on some of their own clients' cars. And a couple clients came in with really, really high mileage stick shift Mercies. Like real 50, 60, 70,000 mile cars.
Yes.
And they were on the original clutch. And they work, you know what I mean? And these guys drove them, and I was like, "Oh shit! Wait, you mean the stick one works? Fuck out of here!"
It's still going?
Yeah, it was wild.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. It's true. You don't have the same issues. I think the the E-Gear pump and all those other things that go. And then when they do go, you're now talking engine out, clutch.
Oh my god, dude! Those an E-Gear pump on a Mercy. Oh, you
hard to find.
You don't want that kind of headache in your life, bro. You don't want that. It's bad news. But let's go back. Let's go back like 30 years, John. Your father and even your grandfather were in the exotic car business before it was even really. Before the manufacturers were in the exotic car business in America. So tell me that story. How did you become you?
So essentially my grandfather immigrated to the U.S. in 1957. He was working at a service facility, and I don't think he had realized, he barely knew the language. But he was just a hardworking guy. He was working as a truck driver, as a mechanic, and all these things. But he was an incredible engineer. So like you could give him any part, a door handle, and he'll make it. And he'll weld it and then polish it. And he was just really a creative guy. And at some point, the gas station was going to close or something like that, and he ended up saving enough cash to basically start this little business. And he made it this early service facility for European cars. And at that time, I mean, how many people were, promoting that they would fix a Jaguar E-Type or a Ferrari 250, any version, MGs, all the cars from BMC, et cetera. So he had this little niche of servicing these cars. And at that point, you had Luigi Canetti, and, he was the Ferrari distributor.
Yeah.
And, they would have these old race cars and old service cars. So my grandfather would go buy them. He would fix them up and then sell them. And that became like a little business for him. And it's sort of cool because, I mean, I look at my grandfather as the ultimate embodiment of the American dream, because in 1967, he bought a brand new Jaguar E-Type, which actually my father still owns to this day.
Oh, really? That's cool.
And imagine that was in 10 years of being in the U.S. And he came here with $500 or $600. So really worked hard, built this business. And it's cool because I look back at a lot of the old photos and you see him driving, a 250 short wheelbase like it was nothing. To them, it was a $5,000 used car.
Yeah,
And and even until, and God rest him when he passed, I don't even think he realized the significance of the cars that he owned and he was working on. He had a 250 GTO. He had a D-Type. For him, it was.
Did he have a story of selling a GTO? Did he sell a GTO for like $5,000?
Yes,
Is it one of those?
It was like $9,800, and
I traded it for a necktie.
Yeah, basically. So my father was supposed to be a stockbroker, immigrant family, wanted him to do something like, be a doctor or something. And he fell in love with cars. I mean, he was truly the passionate one. And at like 13 years old, he rebuilt an engine. And my grandfather couldn't ignore that he was talented. And even though they fought all the time, he did not want him to be a mechanic. And by the time my dad, I think, was 18, he took over the business. At 16, his first car was a Lamborghini Miura that had an issue running, so they ended up buying it cheap. I think they fixed it. That was his first car.
His first car at 16 was a Miura.
That's nuts.
That's fucking bananas.
That is
nuts.
Insane.
I think we have to go head to head with Bruce Meyer. I think Bruce Meyer's first car was a Gullwing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
That he bought in. I think that's correct. I think when he was on his show, he said his first car was a Gullwing.
That he bought for like $100.
Yeah, no, he bought it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like 10 years old or something at the time, and no one really gave a shit about it. But I think that would be a good heads up, a good top trumps card.
It's all downhill.
Yeah,
from
right.
there.
Yeah.
Was this John? Was this all in Miami?
No, so this was in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
So little town. I actually went back a few years ago and got to visit like the old service station, and it was not anything impressive.
Yeah.
God bless my grandfather for building something out of it was like 3 bays. And I got chills because imagine my entire livelihood, my life is sort of dedicated to him in my father's passion. And essentially so my father became obsessive compulsive with Lamborghini. He basically took business in 77 or 78. And in that time, sort of important to my story, he purchased he had sold his other Miuras. He had bought and sold E-types and Miuras, and he bought the 1972 New York Auto Show Miura SV, which was a one-off car that he ended up putting away. He drove it like 6,000 miles and cherishes it to this day. But that car specifically, I think, taught me a lot about understanding preservation and understanding how to take care of a car.
Zach just Googled it, by the way, and found found a forum post from you in 2008 talking about it.
Yeah. So fast forward in the 1980s, my father had a service facility in Palm Beach, Florida. He was servicing Rolls-Royce Corniches, Jaguar XJSs, and he became the authorized service through the Lamborghini distributor at the time, who was Joe Nastasi.
That's who imported my car. Nastasi imported my Countach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So imagine as a kid growing up, there were days I would go to my dad's place and there'd be 21 Countaches sitting there. I think that was the record. There was 21 cars. And he'd have LMO2s and Jalpas, and he was servicing all these cars. And because my dad's so OCD, imagine every day he was like, I'm an 8-year-old kid after school or on the weekends. He's like, you see that's not correct, or that part's not right, or this needs to be done. You see that little bolt is incorrect. And, at the time he drove me crazy, and I did not have a normal childhood by any means. But it was the most incredible experience that I was able to embrace. Now I really embrace it, obviously, because it's the reason why I am where I am today, but to just absorb all of this knowledge. And I didn't really realize how important the knowledge was till a few years ago, I would say, like 10 years ago. But the details of Miuras, Diablos, Countaches, And then what was sort of cool and sort of a tie into what we do is in the 90s, he became, at the time, the world's largest to-be style dealer. So he had F40s and F50s and all these other Ferraris. So again, when we first
is it called
started
To-Be
this,
Style? The name of the brand is To-Be Style?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I just learned that right now. I guess now I remember seeing all the ad copy and it says To-Be Style exhaust, but I thought that was like an adjective. I thought it was To-Be.
No.
Who's the brand?
Right.
To-Be Style. Oh, I didn't know,
It's
man.
a person.
Oh, I just learned something.
An adjective.
It has, it has. Language has fucked that one up. Poor To-Be. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So you probably that was probably an interesting gig as well, man. Making all these cars fucking loud.
It was crazy. I'll never forget. I'm probably at this point I was probably 14 or 15, and my dad had just finished an F50 with straight exhaust, headers, cat to lead, straight back. And he actually he was like, "Hey, have you ever driven an F50?" And I was like, "No." So I got to drive it up and down the block with him. But that was like life changing.
Yeah, it must have been
driving
deafening.
an F50 at that age.
Fucking straight piped F50. It must have been
Jeez.
so loud.
That's the day you both gave up playing music, by the way. You lost your hearing.
Yeah.
Done.
Gnarly
Exactly.
stuff.
Exactly. And so I really, I give my father, take out the period of I was 18 and I moved out, and I said I wanted nothing to do with his business. But the reality was that I look back at so many great memories, and he really touched me in so many ways. I can tell you how many times the first time I saw a roof, he was servicing a roof Yellowbird. And it was like, he's like, "Hey, you want to feel something fast? Feel this." And he took me for a ride.
Yeah.
I was like, peg back. So,
if you've been in a bunch of Countaches and it's like, now you want to go really fucking fast?
Jeez.
Try this.
Yes.
I actually know I know
so that's-
3 people who have Yellowbirds here in Los Angeles, one of which I got to drive.
Right.
One of the other ones, he brought it out to a show the other night, and Marco has been working on it at TLG, and there's a new there's a Motec system that you can put on these things.
No. I know where this is going.
It's drive-by-wire. It adapts some stuff from the 997 with an electronic fuel controller. It's drive-by-wire. Marco had on the dyno.
No, I know.
625 wheel horsepower in a fucking 87
my
Yellowbird.
God.
Do you know how scary that must be?
Very. How much power did it gain with that controller?
It was
Probably
rated at
a lot.
469 crank from roof in 87.
Do we believe that, though?
No, probably. The one I
Okay.
drove felt like
Felt
it
like
probably
that?
was that. Yeah, and it's like 2,300 pounds.
So this picks up 200 to
Fucking
300.
crazy.
Oh, my God. Electronics are amazing. Amazing.
Sick.
Yeah,
That's
it's
sick.
fucking so
That's so
nasty.
scary.
Yeah, that's if you really want to feel some vintage speed, there's nothing like a Yellowbird, man. That shit is fucking out. It's so fast.
And you know what was another car that he gave me a ride in as a kid? He never let me drive this, I'll tell you that. Was he had a Hennessy, it was a 650R.
Oh, yeah,
or
the
a
Viper.
700. Yes, that was a client's car that he serviced, and that was the Motor Trend. I'll never forget this because it had a little plaque. It was recently on Bring a Trailer, and I don't know how I didn't buy it.
Is it yellow?
It was silver. It was silver with stripes.
Okay.
And it had a little plaque. It was the fastest car Motor Trend had ever tested, 0 to 60, I believe, in 2.6 seconds.
Yeah, Zach's
And
got
that
the
was
test
like-
here. June 1st, 1999. It's
Okay,
what's the number here? Hang on, go down, Zach. Let's see what the 0 to 60 number here. 0 to 60 in 3.3, quarter mile of
something
11.2 at 131.
Insane. Insane.
Yeah,
I mean, back then that was
Top
even
speed.
today that's fast. But yeah,
15.
Yeah, top speed 215 in 99. That's
Yes.
fucking fast.
Whoa.
fast.
That's fucking fast. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I had been in, so I had been around all these cars, and what was really cool was my dad's shop was also on the same street as Renntech.
Oh,
So,
our old pal
meanwhile,
Hartmut. Hartmut is the man.
Yep. He's the man. And I'm this young guy from, let's say I worked at my dad's place from 10 years old to 18, weekends, summers, after school. and I'm outside washing cars or doing whatever, and all I'm seeing is these like hot rod Mercedes fly up and down the street,
ripping. Yeah.
And that was like and I remember my dad like, what are you doing? Why do you care about those German cars? I'm like, that is sick. Like, those are just so sick.
You don't understand, Dad. That shit is fucking out.
Yeah, and fast. John's childhood was our career.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's like lived and driven and been around the cars.
Dude, we went to visit Hartmut, and I drove his CLS 63. I think this was in like 2016. It was like 880 at the tires, full interior.
Insane.
The thing would do fucking burnouts at like 80 miles an hour. It was so crazy.
Yes. So crazy. And he's such a legend. I mean, he started, we recently went to go interview him, and I didn't even realize how much of a legend he was. But he was like one of the first engineered techs at AMG.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's the guy. If you've got an old Hammer, like he's the guy.
Yeah.
Like it's awesome.
He's the guy.
Yeah, that guy rules.
He's the guy.
Renntech is awesome. They don't get enough credit for being as awesome as they are.
I agree completely. It's funny, every time we buy now an early AMG car, you know, we've had a few of the early Hammers. We had actually one of the prototype Hammers, and we right away it just goes straight to him. I don't even let my techs touch it. I'm like, no. This is the guy that probably built this car.
Yeah, right. And it's a really, is he still in the same place he's been for like a while? It's a really unassuming shop with like a crazy amount of history.
So he just moved, and now he's got this incredible facility in Stuart that I recently visited. That's like, it's like a small factory. It's insane.
Oh, cool. Good for them.
But yes, his original place was super unassuming. It like legend, all the legendary magazine cover Renntech cars were built there. I had seen half of them go up and down the street like at 100 miles per hour as a kid.
Yeah.
But
Dude, we were just pulling car covers off of stuff. Like, and it was like, oh, there's a Hammer with a 6-liter in it, like just collecting dust under a cover. Like, oh, there's the prototype for my 6.8 liter stroker.
Those cars
engine.
are great.
Wild.
He's great.
Yeah, wild
great
shit.
stuff.
He's awesome. Legend.
We've got a 560 wide body here at West Side Collector Car Storage with a 6-liter in it. Very low kilometers. Really
stunning,
fresh.
Beautiful.
And I have strategically parked it right outside of our studio window so I can look at it while we're podcasting. That is the fucking tits, man.
It's the car.
That's a Miami car, right? I mean, it's perfect
so
Miami.
It's everything Miami.
Yeah.
It is so drug dealer chic. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
Crazy.
Yeah, it rules. But let's go back to Lambos, because you've all of a sudden you were doing you had an interim as a renter as well, right? You did the rental company thing for a minute, right?
Yes. So I started off doing car shows in my professional career, and I just realized that I lost my ass. I was one financial disaster after another. I was just a mess. But I really was optimistic that I was gonna somehow like hit it big in doing these car events. And it made a name for myself. It introduced me to a lot of people. And I really embrace all of my early failures as an entrepreneur. Because it really guided me sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I was really down and out, and I wrote a business plan. And my business plan, what was funny was with the car shows, all these guys, when they were in town in South Florida, would say, hey, where can I go to, rent a Ferrari or Lamborghini? And what's funny is Gotham Dream Cars actually inspired me. I always thought their business model was incredible. And the car show business was so tough that I told myself, I woke up one day, I forget what book I was reading, and it was like, sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I said, okay, I'm going to just try to do this enthusiast cars. I'm going to do something maybe that I love more, and I'm going to try to do this in Miami. And you know what? We ended up, after a few years, it was a really tough struggle. We ended up very quick. We were the company that actually rented the cars to Justin Bieber when he got arrested. We got some great PR out of that.
That's a good one.
That was a good one.
Didn't you have like a fucking Veyron you were renting out though? You had some shit in the fleet.
Was it Scott Storch's Veyron?
We had some crazy. This is where I think my passion started to come out really as an enthusiast, in the sense that we had a CLK 63 Black Series. We had a Superleggera with no radio. We had the first Aventador. We had all this crazy stuff that really made no sense. As
that nobody wanted to rent. Yeah,
so uncomfortable.
One of the lessons from Gotham Dream Cars was nobody wants the enthusiast stuff. There's no difference between a GT3 and a 911 cab. They want a basic the cheapest Ferrari in red tan. You'll give them automatic everything,
convertible, automatic. Yes, yeah.
That's the lesson of the rental business.
That is the lesson of the rental business. Our yellow Huracan, that was just like the base car, had 30,000 miles, but yes, so you just said it. So we always tried to have enthusiast cars, and I just got to a point in my life where I felt like I was running a small hotel, and your cell phone could never be off.
Yeah.
And it was always a disaster after disaster, and some celebrity was wrecking a car.
I'm having flashbacks from my Gotham days right now.
It's stressful.
If you love the cars, the rental business is the worst fucking business to be in. If you like the cars, the rental business will make you hate the cars. It'll make you hate the people.
Yes.
It's such a horrible business.
The people that run the business, they are the enthusiast ones because they love the cars. The renters don't want that. Like, there's this huge disconnect between the people that love the cars and and rent the cars.
It's so funny.
So we had a 16M that I bought because I thought it was the coolest car ever. It didn't actually depreciate. It was the only car we didn't lose money on.
That's a good one. Yeah.
So the 16M was wrecked 3 times. Nice. and it just killed me because it was like no one cared. No one cared. It was a 16M. So we I would say that for me, I almost went through like a little depression. In the sense that living in Miami, I didn't want to be renting cars. I didn't want the phone call that X rapper just, put our Ferrari 458 into a tree. Yeah. So I was just over it. And what I realized that driving all of the new cars, I started to lose my passion for the cars as well. And it was funny because the second that I made a little bit of money in the rental car business, the first thing I did was I went out and bought a 355 Challenge car.
That's a good idea.
And it was because I was missing something, right? As a daily driver, actually, that was the goal. Driver. No AC, no windows, roll bar I would hit my head on, and but I did that because I was missing something from my childhood. I was missing something that inspired me about cars that was completely dead in the rental car business, and that's where the shift happened. That was actually almost the pivotal moment. Was buying the 355 Challenge.
That's so funny. When I was at Gotham, the car that I liked the most, and it never went out. Nobody wanted it. It was always the last car. And it was a Ford GT, 2005 Ford GT. Which anyone who knows anything about car says is one of the best driver's cars ever built, probably the best American car ever built.
Yes.
They were no matter when you bought them over the last 10 years, they have appreciated. And this one was wrecked 5 times. Nobody could drive it. Everybody crashed it.
Yes.
Nobody $2,500 a day for a Ford, and everyone who worked at Gotham was like, "You don't understand. This is way better than what the Italians are making right now."
Yeah.
It proved what you say. The customer and the renter or the person owning it, just the priorities are just totally different. And I see why you didn't want to stick around that business either, because you're like me, where you're like, what they want and what I want to be doing are not the same things at all.
No. Yeah. No, so we had a CLK 63 Black Series that I think historically, and I could tell you, it rented 3 times.
Yeah.
In maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
And I think one of the times was because literally there was no other cars available.
Yeah, I mean, it's just people, from a rental perspective,
cars.
it's just a fucking Benz. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't give a shit, you know?
And it doesn't look that special.
Yeah. He said, and at Gotham, the record was every single manual transmission car that they ever had was totaled. Every one. Compared to like 1 out of 150 of the automatic cars.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I bet.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense how you ended up, being a passion center, which is what Curated is now, where it's like the most passionate clients looking for the most special vehicles, and
thank you.
And you get to acquire them, make them perfect if they're not already, and then find the owner who will most appreciate the nuance of that very special thing, as opposed to the renter who's like, it's a fucking black Mercedes. Why am I paying $1,500 a day for
that? Well, you said it, and I thank you for saying it like that. You described it better than I think, better than I can.
Well, I'm available on a rate.
So we really, and I say it's a blessing to be at the place that we are now. I mean, we really can do what's in our gut of doing the right thing, chasing the right cars, seeking out what we love. There's been many times where I get probably too excited about a car, but I know we have to have it. We have to be part of its history, or in many ways we have to save it. It's like, there's a lot of these cars, have been sitting for 15, 20 years.
Yeah. And
at some point in their life, it could have been 50, 60 grand, and no one was willing to put the money into them to get them to the point where they should be and their true potential. And I think that's also, Countachs have gotten a bad rep, and Diablos and a lot of cars have gotten bad rep because when they were cheap, guys weren't doing a proper service. They weren't changing suspension bushings. They weren't doing the right things.
Right.
So the car would be sitting for 15 years. They'd jump in it, drive it like a 911 race car.
Yeah.
And
this thing drives like shit.
Do everything right.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, I think that most people who drive a Countach and say it's junk have driven a bad one. I mean, not a bad one necessarily, but one that's sat, one that doesn't have the proper amount of rubber left in it, one that, like, most people don't understand that, like, it takes, like, 30 minutes to warm up a Countach.
Whoa.
and if you drive it before it's warm, it's, like, a little clunky. You know what I mean? But once it's warm, everything is really slick and tight and fucking great. Like, I have to get in my car and kind of baby it for 15 miles or so. For those who know LA, I leave my shop. It's not till I pass Sunset on the PCH that the oil temp thing comes off of ice cold. It's got so much oil in that car. It's like 16 quarts.
Oh my God.
It takes forever to warm that bitch up. And once it's warm, it's like, oh, I see why this was the most expensive car you could buy at the time. It's fucking great,
Great. Yes.
Yeah. So what is the average state of a car like? Because you guys buy really low mile stuff, which means it's done a lot of sitting. So does the average car that comes to you need like a major overhaul?
So you know what? Even if so here's what I try to do. So when we're seeking out a car, I mean, listen, I'm always trying to buy lower mileage cars. It's part of what the company sort of represents, our DNA. It doesn't mean that high mileage cars are bad. They're actually, many times they've been serviced much better than lower mileage examples. But we've sort of built the company around, and I go back to my OCD father of originality and original paint, original interior, concourse preservation. And the reason for that is just because I know it so well. I mean, it's sort of like a second nature to look at a Countach or, an F40 and say, okay, those things are correct or those things are incorrect. So we built the company around that. Now, I've seen 150-mile Countach that I literally said, I'm sorry, I can't buy this. It was not stored properly. The leather had mold so far through it. It was actually, it like bled through the leather. The carpets stunk so bad so like, it's not just about low mileage, it's about preservation.
Right.
Here's what I will say. Things like, I love when I see that an interior is preserved correctly, because it's almost impossible to reproduce the materials, the carpet, the shift knob, the way it was in 1981. So that's huge for me. Original paint is incredible to see, but listen, cars can have spot work. It's normal. There was a crack, there was a dent, there was a scratch. So I look at things like that, and then I say, okay, is there corrosion all over the chassis, or is the zinc plating, is it still there? Did the car ever overheat? So there's little things that I'll look for. And then if the foundation is great, listen, I'm not scared of pulling an engine and doing valve cover gaskets, head gaskets, a clutch or suspension bushings. And really, when you do that on a car like that, a Diablo or Countach,
makes a huge
it could
difference.
last for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And it makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
So I would say that 70% of the cars, we are trying to do everything, but a big portion of that is to build retention with clients.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing you could ever do, even if a client tells us, no, I'll take it as is, I'm almost scared for him. And I say, wait, let's try to prep this car so you have a great experience. So you'll actually say, okay, maybe I want another one, or I'm going to buy something else. I think the worst thing in the world is putting someone into something that they completely don't understand. I'll never forget one of the big Miami nightclub owners, who's a great guy. He's a significant figure down here. His name is Dave Grumman. He's like he's a celebrity in his own right. And he came in and he's like, hey, I want that black Countach. I got to have that car. And I sort of said, okay, well, what's the purpose? And he said, no, I want a cool vintage car to drive every day. And I'm like, no. This is not the car for you in Miami. This is, a couple times a month, every weekend, and you take it out for 30 minutes for a couple hours. You enjoy it, but you're not going grocery shopping. You could, but you're not doing that with this car.
Let me set you up with a 512 TR, sir. That's what you need.
Yes,
those are better.
993 turbo, or I gave him a list of cars, an Acura NSX.
Yeah,
perfect car to do all those things, and you can still enjoy it in a classic. And it's funny, he was a little upset with me at the time. He's like, "You're not going to sell me the car?" And I go, "No, because I don't want to be. You're going to call me Sunday at 10 p.m. because the car didn't start somewhere or something. You left a light on." So I really feel responsible for the next generation, and I really feel responsible to make sure that the end user has an awesome experience, and they're not on a forum that's like, oh, I drove a Countach and it was shit.
Yeah.
So
no, if I tried to use mine to go to the grocery store or commute to work with, I'd fucking hate it. I really would. I take it out early in the morning. Every 2 or 3 weeks, I go on a 50 to 80 mile blast, and it is the greatest thing you can ever imagine. And that's what it's for. And I fortunately was lucky enough to buy a car that was straight out of a major with a brand new clutch. That was part of the deal. I'll buy this car, but I will buy it perfectly functioning. And because of that, the car's been overwhelmingly incredibly reliable, and really easy to deal with, frankly. It broke once recently, but it's handled. Which reminds me, have you fucked with those Permatune fuel boxes or ignition boxes or whatever?
It's so funny. So people now, the MSD, they replace it with the MSD, or now Permatune will rebuild the original Magnarelli.
Right.
We are actually going to give. We have been changing them with MSD. The factory also makes there's a new box you could buy as well. We're going to try Permatune. We haven't tried them yet, just simply because it'll be in its original casing, which is nice for concourse showing or anything like that. So we're going to give them a try. It's funny. We have two actually that took a shit on the Countach Rally that will be going out. So I don't know if you've gotten yours back yet.
No, my car has the Permatune box in the original casing.
Wow, okay.
But Donnie Calloway, who works on my car, he doesn't like it. He wants to take it out and put a stock Lamborghini computer back in it. So
you know what? Listen, if you ask my father with 40 years of experience, he's always going to say, go stock Lamborghini. Yeah. Don't mess with it.
Yeah. That's what Donnie says. Yeah. Yeah.
But the only thing is the new Lamborghini unit isn't in the same casing.
Oh,
so
I see.
It looks, it
looks
is
a little
Lamborghini.
different.
But does it work better?
I don't give a shit what it looks like.
Right.
It's under the fucking bodywork. I can't see it. I don't care.
You just said it. And that's, you know what? And that's why we have been changing them with the MSD. Because I think even if you bring your car to a concours today, anyone's going to be understanding that you're not going to find a new old stock Magneti Morelli box sitting around. You've got to go with the MSD. I liked the Permatune because I thought it was best of both worlds.
Sure.
But you make an interesting point.
I don't know. That's the thing. I know what I don't know.
Okay.
I can't pretend to know what's better. I'm not a fucking wrench. But Donnie is the nerd of nerds. And he is insane, and he is fucking obsessive.
I love it.
When he worked on my Ferrari, he took the fuel lines to Jet Propulsion Lab to have them like palladium coated or whatever the fuck they
actually okay, yes.
So he's that guy. He's the guy who does that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so I don't I don't question.
That says a lot.
Yeah, I don't question.
You don't. And you know what? When you have a guy like that, you don't question.
No, I don't question.
You don't.
No, let him do it.
Experience is 10 times more powerful than any book. So.
Right. So here's the question though. You've obviously, for better or worse, you've painted yourself in this box, right? Here's what Curated does. Vintage supercars from the 70s to the early 2000s. These are all, and for better or worse, very low production cars. When you have yourself as that kind of a specialist, are you concerned about running out of special cars eventually?
So there's always here's what I'll say. There's always a fear in my mind. I mean, there's days where I'll say, wow, we're really light on inventory. Right now we've owned at any given point, we have about 25 cars. Let's say 5 are in restoration or series of restoration. 5 to 6 cars will be available, and the rest are in transit. Now, we're in a really interesting market right now. I mean, I think the classic car market is as hot as it was in 2014. Mm-hmm. So right now, I mean, listen, we have cars that are incoming that are sold, and it's just the nature of the industry. We could put a teaser on social media, and we're chasing such unique cars, such interesting cars and we have an excellent retention base. We have the best clients in the world. I mean, the most passionate buyers and collectors, that a lot of what we're buying today is selling before it even gets here, which is a little weird. It sort of makes me sad because it's arrived and, by the time we're done with a service or any details that it needs, the car's gone. So like the Miami Vice car was sold in hours almost. We had the car here for maybe a week. Here's what I'll say is that we try to be somewhat aggressive on pricing. I'm not the guy that holds out for our retail asking all the time. I'm more about building relationships with clients. And I ask clients, hey, if you ever want to sell this, please get me first right of refusal. Yeah. So a lot of the cars that we've now historically sold are now coming back to us, which is very cool. There's a few cars that I've had the opportunity, I think, to sell 3 or 4 times over. And now I think, and this is something where if you look at our business and as we grow, we will have to do a lot more restoration work, and we will have to take cars that maybe don't fit the mold today, but maybe are full projects, and we're restoring them exactly to the were in 89 or 91 or whatever it is. So historically, we didn't start out doing restoration projects. And I think that will be the evolution of the business. We'll always have, 50% of our inventory will be, a 500-mile Diablo SE30 with, original tires that's, Concours ready. But I think we will have to get into, preservation and restoration, and we're doing a lot of it already. And I think in an interesting way, we are trying to reinvent the concept of, and someone made fun of me recently for using this, but I use the term preservation restoration. So it's keeping as much as we can original, even if there's a crack, even if there's a stone chip, but making sure that the mechanicals and everything else, if it's tires, making sure that everything else is ready to be driven, and that it can be shown in a proper way. And if there's a stone chip or a dent, someone's still very proud of it.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, if you look at some of the stuff at Pebble Beach, preservation class stuff brings enormous money. I mean, even if you want to drive it, it's a good place to be because you don't have to freak out about every single thing. And if you want to invest, preservation class is a way to do it. I mean, there's cars at these auctions at Gooding and shit. They got fucking big chunks of paint missing. They got dents. They got torn leather, and it shows. And they'll bring $2 million. They'll bring millions of dollars, and it's that for that reason. I will never paint my Countach. My Countach has 2 door dings on it. I'll never fix them. It's got, my car's not 100% original paint. It's mostly original paint. Somebody a long time ago opened the doors into a fucking ceiling of something, which then, they had the top of the doors had to be repainted. We discovered, and so fuck it, whatever. But it's the story of the car, so we're gonna leave it, and it is what it is, right? What about cars that have you ever bought any cars or worked on cars that have really extraordinary mileage in terms of being high?
Yeah, so we recently bought a car, and this is something that I had to buy. I didn't care the condition. It was the original 1995 and 1996 Indy pace car. It was PPG Indy pace car. It was the black Lamborghini Diablo that was used as the IndyCar pace car. And we found it through another expert that found it sort of by accident. I think the owner knew what it was, but he had noticed that there was this black Diablo that had a entire roll cage. It had Yoda scoops, and it had these 2 toe hooks in the front of the bumper, but it looked all factory. And he sent me a picture, and he's like, I think this is the pace car. And I go, it has to be, because the toe hooks, the factory roll cage, the Yoda scoops, they never made another Diablo like that. Yeah. And it's got this crazy history. So it has, I think it's 36,000 miles, which for a Diablo is, it's like saying, it's like 100,000 mile Mercedes. I mean, maybe a 200,000 mile Mercedes. And what's interesting about the car is when we realized, we went through factory records and we realized, okay, it was the car. We actually then determined, I posted some historical photos of it, and then an incredible mechanic reached out to me, Steve at Driven Exotics, who's one of the best Lamborghini mechanics in the US. He used to work for Albertoni, who's famous Lamborghini mechanic. He was a dealer at one point in the 60s and 70s, I believe. And he goes, oh my God, while I worked for Albertoni, the factory sent us that car. Someone had I think they had downshifted wrong at Laguna Seca while going around the track during an IndyCar race. And the chain skipped, or the chain broke, imagine. Oh, God. And basically imploded the motor. And he goes, when I was taking out the motor, it was a original Diablo Yoda engine, full Yoda kit, full Yoda package. So it was probably some experimental engine that was in the car. And the factory sent us a brand new engine for us to put in a new engine, no Yoda kit. They're like, we're not going to put that back on the car. And he's like, I was the one that installed it. So he actually sent me photos. That car, imagine, not only it has, probably almost 40,000 miles. It's got stone chips everywhere. Yeah, but it doesn't even have its original engine. But it rules. Yeah, but it rules. And I think historically, it's so important. It's so cool. And so I think there's certain cars that for us are so important. It doesn't matter the mileage or the condition. they're a part of history and they're important to history, that you have to buy them. And whether it's a full restoration or you leave it the way it is, let's make sure it's running properly and everything's been serviced. But who cares about the miles?
Yeah.
It's a piece of history.
Well, when you've got, because it's like there isn't another one, so it doesn't matter how many miles are on it. It just, this is the one. You know what I mean? Same thing with your with Doug's Monaco Grand Prix car, which is fabulous. And I saw at your place, my pal Doug owns that car with the fucking light bar on it and the loud hailer. I mean, that is fabulous. And who gives a shit how many miles are on it at that point? What's the difference? It's one of one, you know? It's great.
One of one. And I think it doesn't matter. And Doug's probably the most passionate. He's a dear friend and a great client, and he's as passionate as you can get. And I love Doug. He's the best.
He rules. I'm about to hang out with him in Newport. The Audrain Concourse is coming up at the end of the month. I'm going. Are you going to go?
You know what? I'm going to try to make it. My wife is due October 22nd with our second
Congratulations.
boy.
You're cutting it close.
Thank you. I'm cutting it very close. I don't want to be that guy that's at a car show.
No, you don't.
No, I understand. Yeah, but I'll be out there with Jay Leno. And cool. I think Spike is going, and of course Donald Osborne. It's his show. So that's at the end of September, beginning of October. It's funny you mentioned Albertoni. You know, my car has a weird, funky Albertoni exhaust on it. That's from Period.
Dude, I don't know if you know, I am the biggest fan of that exhaust because they were actually steel.
Yes.
And something about the steel resonates way better than stainless. It sounds so incredible on a Countach or Diablo that I'm actually trying to find someone to make me remake those exhausts again in steel, or basically duplicate those exhausts.
Well, for low price for you, my friend, you can 3D scan mine for low price. I make good price for you.
I love it.
It does. It sounds completely unlike other Countaches, though. I've never heard one that sounds like mine. It's wild.
Yes. It's wild, right?
Yeah, it's really neat.
So we had a Diablo with one of those exhausts, and everyone's like, wow, why does this car sound so good? And it's because of the steel.
How interesting.
It's about it can, and it's sad because steel can go bad over times, whereas stainless doesn't. But that sound it's unparalleled.
Well, fortunately, I live in California, and it doesn't rain, and we don't have to drive on salt, so it should be okay, I think. But yeah, it's this really funky exhaust.
We will try to remake you one.
For sure. Yeah. What is your favorite? Okay, forget the Diablos and the Countaches, the obvious stuff. You also get some really, really rare stuff. When I was in there was a Chiseda, there was a Jaguar XJR15. I mean, there's an LM002. You know, stuff that comes through your shop that EB110 Bugatti, you know, stuff that you really don't see. What is your favorite of those really deep oddballs?
So I'm going to go really far down a rabbit hole. I'm going to give you a list of maybe my top 5 of wacky cars. Obviously, I love EB110s. I think the history is so absurd and insane, and the drama. I mean, you could do a whole podcast on the history of Bugatti in that period with Roman Artioli, and he had basically brought together the best engineers in Italy at that time. So Stanzani and all these incredible designers and guys were building these cars. And then, you know, depending upon whose story you listen to, you know, the Italian mafia of, you know, Ferrari and Lamborghini pushed them out. And so a crazy story. And the cars are just so advanced. I mean, carbon fiber monocoque, V12, quad turbo, 4-wheel drive. It almost doesn't get better in the sense of technology at that point. Now, the cars are very temperamental, so there's not many people that work on them in the world. But I think they're just incredible. The fit and finish is spectacular for what's essentially an Italian prototype in that period.
Yeah.
And they're so important for history. You look, I mean, Bugatti is one of the most important brands today when you're talking hypercars.
Yeah.
So I just think they're just they're just so special. I don't know if you know this, even the wheels from BBS are actually magnesium. So like there was no stone unturned when they were developing that car.
Was that the last new car you could buy that has magnesium wheels? I can't think of any car newer than 1995 that has magnesium wheels. I've never really heard of that. And
you're probably right, because the Diablo SC30 was magnesium wheels.
But that was 94.
I think that would be 94.
Yeah.
So I think you're right there. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. You're right.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Weird stuff. Okay, so that's one. What else you got? That other round out the top five.
One.
Yeah.
So I think. Listen,
get the fuck out of here! Look at this. Zach just found our sidebar. 2022 Cadillac V Series Blackwings will get magnesium wheels. Get the fuck out of here!
That is crazy.
20 years later, they brought it back.
I thought they were dangerous. I actually thought magnesium wheels were dangerous.
They must. Okay. Maybe they've got some kind of coating on them now. I mean, they maybe have figured out an alloy. Maybe it's not like full magnesium, or maybe they coat it with some kind of special coating that makes it resistant to fire. But wow, good find, Zach. How about that? That's crazy.
Good find.
Okay,
interesting.
Cool. All right, cool. Good sidebar there.
So you know what? I am a huge fan of, and we spoke about this earlier, but AMG, early pre-merger AMG cars. We had the opportunity to buy the Car and Driver cover car. We had the opportunity to buy the Road and Track cover car. So we're on this crazy pursuit to find like the most significant hammers. They represent to me like the muscle cars of the 60s, like a Hemi Cuda convertible or whatever. Yeah. I think that's this generation's, muscle cars.
Sure. Pre-merger AMG is that's good stuff.
So cool.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. They're hand built. They were fast. They're reliable. You could jump in that car and you could drive it every day if you wanted to. So, and listen, AMG is one of the most important brands of our time. And look, those cars were so rare. I mean, I think, Hammers, there's like original sedans. There's like maybe 26, 24 in the world. So, I mean, these cars were super rare. And to think that, these cars were trading for nothing for so long. I mean, now they've gotten expensive.
Yeah.
But to think they traded for nothing for so long and how important AMG is today.
Compared to the BMW, the early M cars had like a 5-year head start on value versus the AMGs. Like there was a period where the E30 M3 started to be like real collectible and the E28 M5 started to be real collectible, but like people were still sleeping on the AMGs. I think it's because they were automatic transmissions. I think that's probably why the delay. But now, fuck me, a pre-merger AMG, 300,000, 400,000. I mean, enormous money for these cars.
Rare, fast, reliable, cool.
Yeah. Yes.
You had to be in the window.
It's cool because like, we just I was talking to the founder of WeatherTech, who's a huge, passionate car collector. He was one of the original salespeople for AMG North America.
Really?
Imagine in the 80s.
So
there's
know
this
that. That's
cool
wild.
Connection. Yes.
That's crazy.
A cool connection of incredible collectors that, have somehow tied into those cars. So I love them. I'd say, and probably more mainstream, not funky, but definitely the F50. I am a huge F50 nut. For years, people hated them. I don't know why. They were like the least favorite Ferrari supercar, but it really is. I mean, imagine that is a F1 engine, truly, not some good marketing department. That is an F1 engine that's been developed for the street.
I always thought the hate of the F50 was dumb. I never understood why the F50 didn't get love. It made sense. It's not ugly. It's like it was a beautiful car. I never really got the lack of appreciation for the F50. It all added up to me.
Was it like one of the first cars that had this F1 shape underneath bodywork, like that separated nose? Was this the first step toward that before the Enzos?
I think without a doubt, if you look at the construction of the car, when you're doing an engine out or a clutch job, the entire rear half of the car gets separated. I mean, it is a it is a race car. That car shares
Or if you smash one into a telephone pole on ACH, the entire rear half gets separated too.
I don't know. Maybe it was just so strange. People were like, "What is this shape?" And it's like that's because it's an F1 car under there. But people were dumb.
I mean, that's way better looking than the Enzo.
Yeah,
I'm not a big Enzo fan. I mean, they're striking, but like I can leave the Enzo. This is the shit. And the roof comes off.
And the roof comes off. It's manual. It just checks. To me, it checks every box.
Yeah.
And they were unloved for many years, and I had always loved them. Now they're hot. I mean, now they went insane.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the market lately.
I have. The market, it's ridiculous.
$4 million.
Yeah. They were like $500-600 grand for 10 years. And that's
forever.
not that that's nothing. That's
Forever.
a lot of money, but that's basically what the market price. Weren't they $499 new? I think they were $499K new.
Yes.
So
it was a lease new, but it came out to like $499, something like that.
Ferrari's really figured out.
Figured that out. They didn't want any speculators like the F40, so they forced everyone to lease the cars when they were new.
Yeah. Ferrari's always had a keep it in the family scam going that's worked really well. And now Rolex. I mean, Rolex was like, oh, I see. What did they do? Oh, they made you buy 3 used ones to get access to a new one? Oh, they made you buy like the ugliest shit we make in order to get like the one that no one can get? We Guys, wrap it up.
Copy, paste.
We're going to need you to buy 3 lady date justs and a diamond president in order to have access to a Submariner.
I love it. It's true, though.
It's 100% true. I went into a Rolex store the other day, and I was wearing my GMT Master, and the fucking guy looks at my wrist, looks straight up at me, dead ass, goes, no professional series, no steel, no 41s. I was like, oh, I see.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
hello, sir. How are you?
Ugly.
Yeah, exactly. And you got the diamond-covered president.
That is an ugly watch.
That is all profit, my friend. Yeah.
It is all profit.
Yeah. So F50, and then what's number 5 on the Temerian top 5?
So I would have to say in rookie cars. So now I'm gonna like hit on maybe 2 cars that have been historically, I would say, unloved, but I would definitely say the 355 Challenge, 348 Challenge, that series of cars. They're the last street legal. Well, I'm not totally street legal, but imagine they could still be street legal race cars. That a gentleman driver could service himself. He could do it himself. He could take off the wheel. He could do the brakes himself. And they're the last manual gentleman driver cars. So, whereas the 360, I mean, those F1 Challenge cars, they were never legal for the street. Whereas the 348 and 355 are actually street cars, then the factory converted to race cars. I just look at those as like the end of an era. Gentleman driving was a big thing in the 60s. Mm-hmm. You had guys that would take their 250 short wheelbase, go race a race and drive home. Yeah. And those cars is so funky, so cool. They're rare. And all I know is as a kid, to me, that's all I ever wanted to do was go race the Challenge series. It seemed so freaking cool. And I love those cars. I think they're, even still today, they're undervalued. And they're neat. I don't think anyone, like, people for years looked at them as old junky race cars, and I adore them. I think they're cool.
I've not driven a 355 Challenge. I drove a 348 Challenge, and it was very nice and very fun. And it's interesting to think about that is the last of a street legal registerable race car. You really can't. I've heard of a couple of folks. Well, I could talk about him because he's fucking dead. Benny Caiola had an Enzo and an FXX, and he would just put the Enzo license plate on the FXX and drive that shit on the street.
Jeez.
And I've heard of a couple other folks in other countries putting their GT3 license plates on cup cars and driving them around. But that's not like legal. That's shady. This was actually legal, and it does go back to the 60s where basically all race cars were street legal.
You drive them to the
Even
race.
the prototypes, really, in a lot of cases, you could drive on the street.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Oh, you know what?
So
Shout out to Jimmy
love
G.
those.
Shout out to Jim Glickenhaus because his fucking Le Mans cars are street legal, actually. That's like one of his things. That's like a core
the SC.
Glickenhaus tenant.
Yes.
Which is wild.
Yes. And that I think that Jim harks back to the 60s as just such a glorious period for racing and everything he does. I mean, he the boot and all these different things, and I think that's what's so special about what Jim does.
The boot
and I think that's what's so special. It's so cool, right? So I think that's cool. Man, and it's tough now to round it out. I mean, I'm gonna say definitely XJ220.
I've never had to go in one of those. Are they nice to drive?
Dude, so you're gonna laugh. So I just sold one to a gentleman. He did a major service on it, and the service is somewhat complicated. It's an engine out service. It has fuel bladders, so you have to change the fuel bladders. It's timing belt driven. You have to change the timing belt.
Stinks.
Yes, but I was really interested to see his thoughts. He's got a mixture of everything. He's got an early Countach. He's got Diablo SV, Carrera GT. I believe he had an F40 at one point. So he has he has a Mazda MT900. He's got all these crazy cars.
You're really off the deep end if you're fucking buying Moslers. You have hit the end of the pool.
Scraping the resin,
So he has a wide of anybody, let's say, supercar vocabulary. He's tried everything or driven everything. So I was really interested to see his thoughts when he got the XJ220. And he absolutely loved it. He shocked how fast it was. I did, pre-warn him. I said, listen, it's driving a semi because it's so long. You have to plan your turnout because the turning radius is absolutely terrible. And the interior is very sparse. It's basically a race car for the street. But it is truly that. It is a race car. It was developed and built by TWR, who is a
Tom
famous
racing
division gangster. He had won Le Mans how many times? And listen, these guys were serious. They took this car very seriously. Very fast car, very well built, and they're just so undervalued. You look at 959s, you look at F40s. People really didn't love these cars for years. I remember at one point they were like $100,000, $150,000.
Okay. Good. Technical difficulties averted. Okay. XJ220. All right. Well, before we have it, we'll move on from that. I like your top five. Your top five is good. I think that's a good selection of oddballs. We've got a few questions from our Patreon patrons.
Cool.
And one really stood out to me. And it's something we talk about in the show a lot. You are in the business of selling investment-grade collector vehicles, but you're also an enthusiast who likes driving cars. So for a minute, let's talk about the value of a driving experience. For instance, what car that is an investment-grade car lives up to its ridiculous purchase price? For instance, is a $3 million Miura SV really a twice as good of an experience as a $1.5 million Miura S or a $500,000 Countach? What really lives up to its obscene price tag in the world of collector cars?
So that's an excellent question, by the way. And I'm going to say that there's probably 5 or 6 cars that I am completely in love with every time I drive, and I get goosebumps if I'm driving them. I could make probably a list of 10 cars that I think are totally worth it, that are just absolutely incredible. One is a Miura. The Miura is like a 60s race car. It's as radical as anything you've ever driven. It revs quick, which imagine for a car from the 60s and 70s, it just, it didn't exist. The handling is actually pretty good for a 60s, 70s car. And the way the gearbox winds and you hear all these sounds in the cockpit, it is completely fucking insane. I mean, it's just magical. So to me, is the difference between a Miura S or an SV, is it warranted? Well, I'll say that, you know, a SV in many ways is like the ultimate. I mean, when you think of Lamborghini, you almost say an SV is like the holy grail. It's super rare. But the drive experience between an S and an SV is not really different. Now, when it comes to more expensive cars, listen, I was testing a good client's F50 this morning. We had just finished a restoration, and there was a few little tweaks. I sent him a picture of my goosebumps. I mean, that F50 is just so special. I don't think you can ever be jaded around that car. It is a work of art. And then I think if you go, and I'm going to just quickly name a few other cars, Carrera GT, that experience is insane. The sound, the way it revs, the way it pulls in second gear, a Countach. For an experience, I think a Countach and a Diablo are some of the most undervalued cars, especially a later Diablo that the clutch is going to be a little bit lighter. You're talking, SE30 is like Lamborghini's F40. They're radical, they're raw. 550 Barchetta, 550 Maranello, the driving experience is absolutely incredible. A lot of torque.
Barchettas are really undervalued. Really undervalued. They're awesome.
And totally. And then I would say Ford GT, while they made a lot comparative to a lot of the cars we sell, you mentioned it earlier. I think the Ford GT is incredible to drive.
Yeah.
It does everything right. It's fast. It's comfortable. It's fun. So I would say that there hasn't been really too much. Now, I don't have a checkbook to go buy an F50 personally, so I can't. Maybe I'm not the best judge of that question.
Yeah. But no, I think you answered it well, though. I mean, I think you gave us a really strong list of high value cars that deliver on their promises. I mean, you can spend as much as a 550 Barchetta, which is in the threes or maybe even the low fours at the high end.
Yes.
That gets you like a run of the mill brand new Ferrari, which is a nice thing, but it's not, it's not that, it doesn't have that kind of fizz. And so I think you've answered it very well. Let's see. Go to the Patreon. Mr. Nailhead. That's it, Mr. Nailhead? Yeah. Has 3D printing made it easier for one-offs or very low production stuff like Chisetas to stay functional? We hear about Leno 3D printing parts for antique cars. Do you find yourself seeking out 3D printed parts?
Yes. So we just started working on a few Countach parts that we couldn't find. With the Chisetta specifically, we built a great relationship with Claudio Sampoli. God rest him. He recently passed. We're gonna miss him. He was a quite a character, but a legend. So I was actually able to buy parts from him, which was sort of shocking. He had a ton of parts left. But there's a ton of parts that aren't available anymore.
That's not shocking.
What was that?
It's not shocking to me.
So there are definitely some cars that you can't buy parts anymore. It's funny, 91 and 92 Diablos, they're no longer available. You cannot find the ashtray that's in the center of the car that are known for braking. We're going to start 3D printing those. There's a ton of different parts that we're going to have to start doing because no one is currently, not Lamborghini, not Ferrari, none of the manufacturers are producing a lot of parts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. The Leno talks about 3D printing a lot for really old stuff, for stuff like 1910 or whatever.
Wow,
but it's interesting. I mean, it's just like, what the fuck happens to these cars when you can't call anybody to get a part?
He used to send telegrams to get some of the parts for his cars.
I'm surprised, John, you didn't buy the all of Jerry Wiegert's like Vector shit when they closed down his shop. That would have been could have been the Vector guy.
I have never driven an early one, the W8. We had an M12 for a little bit, and it was so wacky. I was almost so scared of it because there was just no resources around the car.
Yeah.
I was looking for a few parts, and imagine as good as we are. I mean, we're treasure hunters here. I mean, people have called us like the Indiana Jones of vintage supercars. But I was terrified of owning the M12 because it was like, who do you call?
Yeah, nobody.
So,
I mean, there's a couple W8s in LA actually, and there's one guy who brought one out, and he was on the original tires. And I was like, you're gonna fucking die. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, and I looked at it up close. It was a shit box. I mean, it was terrible. Everything about it was just awful.
Interior's made out of old phone booths.
It was, dude, and the engine is it's an Oldsmobile Toronado engine that's like got a forged crank and twin turbos put on it and a 3-speed. It's just a terrible idea. The M12 was like underneath was like a Diablo, kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of is the operative word.
It was a Diablo engine reversed.
It was weird. Yeah, it was really strange. But you could have capitalized on it maybe to the 18 people that own Vectors. Hamdan says, how do people with big collections, 20 cars or more, keep them in good condition, keep the mileage low, and keep them running well? Is idling them until they warm up enough for the gaskets and pipes to not get dry? What do you do?
So I'm going to give probably 2 quick examples. I have a few collectors that literally 2 times out of the year, they'll jump in, they'll spend a weekend with their kids and they'll jump in back-to-back cars. They'll take them out, they'll let them get warmed up for temp, and they'll go on a hard cruise. And they might spend 2-3 hours. They'll go through each car and then say, okay, this car needs this car needs this, and they'll send it to us or send it to someone for servicing. Then there's the less aggressive. I mean, I know a few guys that they'll jump in their Countach, and do 150 or 120. But then there's a group of guys that I would say, that maybe don't drive their cars as much, that I always recommend start it once a month, start it, once every 2 months, at least get it up to temp, take it around the block and use everything, just try everything. So at least, if it's clutch master cylinders go because they sit frozen for months at a time or whatever, years at a time. So it's just about using everything. And I think that's super important. I'm finding that today's buyer are looking for cars that they can also use. So I think years ago we had these, this concept of guys like hoarding 200 cars and they would never drive them. But I'm seeing more and more today's buyer using the cars. There's a lot more social events that, even if it's once a year at Pebble Beach, they're out, they're using their car. And I think we're living in a little bit of a different world.
I'm that mentality. The me of 10 years ago wanted to have a big collection and started to have a big collection. I got up to like 7 cars and I was just like, I don't have time to drive this shit. I don't have anywhere to keep this shit. Something always needs something. This is annoying. Yes. And now, like, I'm down to just 2 old cars, which is, granted, I'm very fortunate. I like my, not everybody can have that, but my 2 old cars get used regularly enough, and it's not super annoying to deal with them because I can just hop in them and drive them, and they typically work, and really. The Italian tune-up is a real thing. Like, it's a real thing. Like, it's not like a goof. Like, when the fucking Lambo gets up to temperature and the oil temp is up, I put that bitch in third and I bang it off the rev limiter a couple times, and it really wakes the car up. It feels really nice. It's like a very real thing. Like, it actually helps the car run good. And if I drive it around and don't shift it over 4,000 or 5,000 a couple times, it gets kind of like choked up. It needs to get blown out. It's like, that's a real thing.
Right. Yeah. It's like a muscle. We got to keep using it.
Well, they're high performance engines, and the cars were built before, post like 2010, when McLaren came on the scene and it was like, and Lambo, went to the dual clutch, and it was like, okay, people are buying these cars to drive in urban settings now. You know what I mean? They're buying them to drive them or cruise around LA. Like, Lambo didn't give a fuck about that before. You know what I mean? Like you had to drive the car hard, and that made it work better because the things were designed to be operated at a certain range. And now the priorities are a little bit shifted, you know, so that you don't have to do the Italian tune-up. Your Huracan will still probably work right, you know?
Right.
But the older cars, you really, even like the Miura, I bet, if you take an old Miura out, I mean, once it's warm, don't you got to zing it up to redline a couple times to blow it out?
You know what? It's funny. I've had people make fun of me sometimes because I'll be, you know, with an old Miura, you know, once it gets warmed up, winding through the gears, you know, second gear, winding through the gear or revving it at a stoplight, you know, but the cars, especially a Miura, especially anything that's carbureted, it wants to be driven hard. I mean, it acts like a different car. And I agree with you completely. I think, you know, once you, obviously the oil has to go through the, you know, the engine and you know, especially with a Countach because it's
so much of it.
It's so much of it. But I think it's so important for the cars. And listen, the cars that come back to us or cars that I'm buying that are guys that they don't have to drive it all the time, but at least if they're taking it out a couple times a year, they're warming it up properly and then they're driving it hard. Those are the cars that run the best all the time.
Yeah. I completely agree. There's a story I love to tell, and some people may have heard this a million times, but I'm family friends with Ralph Lauren. My dad was the president and COO of Ralph Lauren for many years, and so I talked to Ralph. All I ever talked to him about was cars. That was it. And he told me this great story. You know, back when McLaren F1s, he has 3 of them. He has 2 silver road cars and an orange LM, and it's the fucking G-est shit you've ever seen. Right?
Does he have one silver car that he drives a lot, and the other one's just a bubble?
No, he drives all of them actually, and the reason he bought the 2 silver cars was because he has twin sons, and he doesn't want his sons to fight over the cars when he dies. So if 2 exist in the world, he buys 2. He's got 2 Gullwings, he's got 2 F40s, he's got 2 F50s, he's got 2 Reventon Lamborghinis, he's got like 2. I mean, everything you can imagine. If 2 is out there, he's got fucking 2. Not the stuff that like won Le Mans in the '60s, but all the other shit, right? So he's got one of his McLaren F1s. It's not running right. And this story takes place in like 1997 or 1998. Okay? He plugs the car and its 14.4 modem into the wall. Because that's what you did. You'd plug the McLaren F1 into the wall and it would dial Surrey. Right? And these 2 guys show up in tweed jackets. They come to Ralph's house with their little tool bag. They go, okay, give us the keys. They drive the car. They take it out for like a half hour. They bring it back and they go, you're not shifting it high enough. And they get in the car and they go back to England. And that's the entire story.
They're like, it's running fine.
You're not shifting it high enough.
What an awkward moment for the tech talking to a billionaire, though. Sorry.
Okay.
You're not driving it correctly?
Yeah, that's real. I have one personal question for you, and then we're going to go with anonymity as our last question. You've been around so many Countaches. I'm not going to ask you which one's your favorite, because I know the answer is yours. You've got a low body, and that's your favorite Countach, right?
You know what? So I love my 2 favorites. I would say are a low body and then a 5,000 QV. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, anything from 78 to 88. I think those are the cars. You know, even a 5000S, I'm in love with. There's something, you know, I will say I love driving an LP400S and then a 5000 Quattro valve. Is almost like driving 2 different cars. So I recently started to fall more in love with L400Ss, but then when I drive a 5000 Quattro valve, I'm like, wow, I really love the power. It feels more like a supercar.
Right.
Whereas the LP400S feels like more of a funky vintage Italian exotic car, feels more 70s. So they're almost like different cars. So I recently, you're gonna laugh, I had to like go through my head and say, well, you know, one day in my dream collection, do I want a 5000 QV? I mean, God willing, if I can afford it, it would be incredible to have both. It'll never, I don't think it'll happen, but, you know, what do you want out of a Countach? And that's a very tough question because they're So the LP400S is very crude, very raw. There's no door panels. It's like a piece of just leather on a plain door. So they're two different cars, and it's so hard to pick one. It's like saying, what's your favorite kid?
But that's not my question. My question is, because back in the day, because the Countach has 2 fuel tanks connected with a crossover pipe. Back in the day, there was a filler on each side. In each side NACA duct was 1 filler. And you could park it down the middle of 2 fuel pumps and go simultaneous. Mine in 87 only has 1, okay, on the passenger side. How the fuck do you fill it up all the way, John?
So
how do I top
where's
off?
the gas station?
How do I
on a
top
hill.
off my Countach? I can't figure this out.
You have to go very, very slowly.
Okay.
And it's the only way. You have to go very, very slowly. Now, sometimes they have a venting issue, which I have to ask one of our techs or my dad. I believe if it has a venting issue, it's not going to fill up all the way.
So mine, what I do is I fill it until it clicks, and then I set a timer for 3 minutes, and I wait 3 minutes, and then I fill it again until it clicks. It'll take about 2 more gallons. And then I set another timer for 3 minutes, and then it'll take about another gallon and a half.
Because you know what it is? It's one tank is the hot tub, and the other one's the pool below it, and it's got that little waterfall over it, and you got to let it kind of transfer over.
So at that point, the gauge is showing full.
Okay.
Right? So then I get in the car, and I start driving it. And a couple of corners in, it goes down to like 3/4.
Sloshes over the other side.
Sloshes over. And so I have absolutely no idea what my fuel economy is because I have absolutely no idea.
Which side do you fill it on? Driver or passenger?
Fill it on passenger side.
So if you fill it up, leave the gas station, and make 4 really hard right turns, that sends all the that'll send the gas to
then
the other side. Pull back in, and that might be faster than doing the 3-minute timers.
It's so silly.
That's hilarious.
Oh, these cars are fucking dumb. Last question before we wrap it up. Anonymity. John, what car is your white whale? Something that has always gotten away that you have never... Do you have an Eleanor?
Oh, there's a few. So there's a few. There was a green Countach Periscopio a few years ago that I actually technically purchased, had an agreement twice. And, you know, when we were first starting, you know, now we have a big floor plan and I have incredible partners. When we were first starting, the company was not like that. It was, we bootstrapped and all this Periscopio Countach. It was a project, and we ended up losing our deposit. It was like felt like $1 million to us then. And then fast forward, the car came on the market again. And I was traveling at the time. I was in Italy. We had the money. I signed a purchase agreement, and I asked someone to inspect it from Italy. I said, can you fly to the UK? This car went from Florida to the UK, and I signed an agreement, and I couldn't get someone to inspect it in time. And I was super concerned about, you know, what had happened to this car over a period of few years. That's not the actual car, but it's almost identical. And I missed it again. The guy said, hey, I can't wait any longer. And I go, I you know, it's $1 million plus car. I have to do an inspection.
I got to inspect it.
One of them.
Yeah.
I
remember
question.
it's a tough question for you because at least based on following you on Instagram, you end up finding them eventually. I mean, the turbo Countach.
I do believe in the power of manifestation. I've found so many cars that I've been looking for years. One of them is a black Miura SV. It was the Chicago Auto Show car. It's chassis 5010. And my dad had spoken to the owner years ago. The owner disappeared off the face of the earth. The car has disappeared off the face of the earth. I actually hired a private investigator. At one point, I thought I found it, hit dead leads. I did a YouTube story about it. I had someone reach out to me. They said they knew where it was. I think it was totally bogus. So that car definitely has to be a white whale. It's such an interesting car, interesting history. And I've been told it's in pieces, and hey, I think it'd be a cool project for us to restore. But I've been looking for that car forever. It's sort of a personal. My dad was originally going to buy that car in period, and he never did. And he always told me about it, that he always wanted it. And I think it's just one of those things that now it's like a personal mission to find.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if anyone out there owns this fucking thing, hit them up. It's dope looking. Zach just got the DuPont Registry article there from January that was help Curated find the Chicago Auto Show Miura SV, and it looks cool as hell. It's an awesome looking car. Yeah. Well, dude, thank you for your time. This has been an excellent show. We love having you, and of course, one of our best friends, Vinny Russo, is working for you down there in Miami, and he's as clutch a player as it comes. And if you're in the market for a very, very special car, you know where to go. And John, your showroom is open weekdays, right? Can people come in and browse and shop?
We're open to the public. We have visitors come all the time, and it's definitely. We always have cool stuff here, even if it's sold. Sometimes they stay here for a couple months, and so yeah, we always have something interesting lying around.
Yeah, if you're in Miami and into cars, this Curated is a must see. I mean, they have not just really cool cars, but they have a wild selection of parts and vintage books, and you can see stuff getting serviced. It's a really, really neat place. Curated TV on YouTube, sort of like their version of VinWiki, talking about some of the cars that they are working on and buying and selling down there. And of course, all of it is at wearecurated.com. For inventory, and if you need to put in a request to have something restored or to have them seek out a special car for you. And John, next time you're in LA, come see us in person. Would you? Love to have you in studio. Tell some more stories.
I would love to, man. I can't thank you guys enough. It's an honor being on the show, and you guys are amazing. And I love your passion and what you're doing for the community and what you're doing for so many young future collectors and aficionados and enthusiasts. So
thanks, man.
Thank you guys so much.
We try. John Temerian of Curated, and that's all at wearecurated.com. And thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you for submitting questions through the Patreon. Again, if you want a totally ad-free experience, patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast. You don't have to listen to me read ads ever again. And for the rest of y'all, are we doing a crew show tomorrow, Zach?
We should, yeah.
Yeah, we got a crew show for the live people tomorrow, Thursday, September 9th. And for everyone else, have a great rest of your day and drive.